Welcome to Chills with Chats. We'll continue the Haunted Heartland series with The Legend of Stiffy Green, Bridges of Alarm, White Lake Creek, and Cry Woman's Bridge. Let's get into it. The Legend of Stiffy Green. Have you ever heard a dog barking in a graveyard at night? Nothing so unusual about that, unless you're in Terre Haute, near the gates of the densely wooded Highland Lawn Cemetery. There is an ominous sign at the entrance. No one, it warns, is permitted in the cemetery after dark. The caretakers had good reason to mount that sign. Highland Lawn is the first resting place of John G. Heinel and his little bulldog, so faithful to his master, that even now he stands watch in the family mausoleum. The story begins nearly 7 decades ago. John Heinel loved his dog, Stiffy Green. The kindly gentleman and his bulldog, trotting obediently at his heels, were inseparable companions on the streets of Terre Haute. Stiffy returning his master's affection in countless ways, he rarely let Mr. Heinel out of his sight. In 1920, John Heinel died. Stiffy Green was inconsolable. He refused to leave his master's side, even at the funeral and burial service. Whenever someone tried to pull Stiffy away, the little dog snapped and snarled. Mr. Heinel's remains were sealed in the family mausoleum of the Highland Lawn Cemetery. Stiffy positioned himself outside the bronze mausoleum doors, his bright green eyes set in a pugnacious countenance, daring anyone to intrude his master's sleep. There he stood vigil, day and night, through rain and heat. He didn't eat, nor did he leave his guard post, except on those few occasions when members of the Heinel family took him home. But Stiffy always found his way back to the Highland Lawn Cemetery, and that's where Stiffy Green died, his body beside a pillar at the entrance to the mausoleum. Miss Heinel could not bear the thought of separating Stiffy from her husband. She asked a taxidermist to preserve Stiffy's body. Miss Heinel then placed the dog on the floor inside the mausoleum near the man he so faithfully followed. Today, Stiffy Green still guards John Heinel. On sunny days, you can peer through the filigreed bronze grillwork of the door into the musty, dark interior and see the perfectly preserved body of Stiffy. It is disconcerting to see a dog inside such a place. At any moment you expect a tail to wag or his head to tilt slightly as if to ask what the visitor wants in this place. As legend persists at Terre Haute that the specters of Stiffy Green and his master still take their daily strolls together. Barking and whining often drift across the night from the vicinity of the Heinel mausoleum. A voice, some say, is that of John Heinel and heard hushing his little companion. People claim they've seen the mausoleum's doors standing open while the figure of a man and a dog walked nearby. No, a barking dog in a graveyard is not unusual unless you are at the Highland Lawn Cemetery in Terre Haute. Then it may be a ghostly bulldog barking at a shadow while following his master on one of their nightly walks. Alright, next story is Bridges of Alarm. Old bridges are perfect settings for ghost tales, particularly in Indiana, whether the structures are concrete or iron. Wooden planks or modern asphalt, steel used or abandoned decades ago. Hundreds of bridges span countless streams and rivers, hold a bevy of prowling specters. Whitelet Creek. The railroad bridge over Whitelet Creek near Dansville in Hendricks County is today only a memory, but when Indiana was new, burgeoning with confidence pioneer businessmen, the trestle was one of the first built by Irish laborers during the railroad boom of the 1850s. Indiana was the site of a vast track-laying network of beefy immigrant laborers. Glistening steel and the staccato rhythm of 10-pound hammers slamming against heavy iron spikes. The stories told in Hendricks County that while one of the supporters of the Whitelet Creek Bridge was being forced, Let's see here. Forced for the trestle, an Irishman lost his balance and fell to his death into the suckening concrete mixture. The railroad company refused to retrieve the dead man's body unless his fellow workers would pay for the undertaking. But the men were too poor to do so. Thus the body was sealed forever in the trestle support. As time passed, the railroad snaked westward toward the horizon. It wasn't long, however, before strange stories began to circulate about the bridge over Whitelet Creek. Weird, mysterious tales about the bridge and the ghost of a dead Irishman. During the driest parts of the Indiana summer, when the sun scorched the baked earth, and little boys sat listeningly beneath towering buckeye trees, watching heat waves rise from the bubbling asphalt. At that time of year, the sport of which the doomed Irishman saw the last rays of sunlight seemed to issue forth human tears. Some say it looked more like blood was dripping onto Whitelet Creek far below. Local residents also reported that on the first night of a full moon, the Irishman's ghost would stand stiff and unmoving on the bridge span, a lighted lantern hanging from his bony right hand. If in the distance the echo of a train whistle reached down the track, the Irishman would swing his lantern to and fro, trying in vain to flag down the engineer. Sometimes he cried out in vain, "Stop, please, take me aboard so that my soul may rest in peace." He never succeeded in stopping the train. Now the railroad bridge is gone, and the legend and the Irishman still remain along White Lick Creek. Alright. Cry Woman's Bridge. The town of Dolan straddles U.S. Highway 40 in east central Indiana between Richmond and Indianapolis. It is a fairly typical small Midwestern city, dependent on a diverse-filled industrial and agricultural industry and the trade. A major highway can bring a city businesses. There was also once a bridge which stood on Heacock Road, southwest of Dublin, a bridge known to the local residents as Crymon Bridge. The bridge is now gone, but its ghostly legends linger. The young woman who gave her name to the bridge was a stranger to the county. Familiar with the numerous twisting country roads. Late one rainy night, while returning home with her infant son, the woman approached the bridge far too quickly. Oh. Well, I gotta hurry now. Oh, I'm so sorry. Lost control of her. Wait, hold on. Approached the bridge far too quickly, lost control of her car at the sharp curve just before the bridge entrance, and plunged into the rainy, sullen creek below. The woman's body was later found by searchers. However, was no sign of her baby. Only a little pink blanket and a baby's pacifier were recovered. The woman's relatives could not be located, and she was buried in a pauper's grave next to a coffin which held the infant's blanket and pacifier. Following the incident, the ghost of a woman was said to be seen prowling the bridge, particularly on foggy, rainy nights, and the specter's infrequent appearances are accepted by painful moans, sobs, and a choking cry that seemingly pleads, "Where's my baby?" A young couple parked near the bridge one evening a few years ago. A short while later, they heard scratching sounds coming from the roof and the trunk of their car. They are aware of the bridge's ghostly reputation and decide to leave, but their car wouldn't start. Suddenly, the scratches became louder and louder, accompanied now by heart-stopping wails. A voice drifted toward them, crying, "Baby, where have you gone? Baby, where have you gone?" The young couple finally got the car started. They examined in later scratches all over the hood, scratches that might have been caused by a woman's long fingernails. Has the ghost ever found its offspring, or is it still searching? No one really knows for sure. Thank you for listening, and come back for more.